One of the best tips that I can give anyone considering buying or selling real estate anywhere in the Bay Area is to make sure that you dig into the numbers about what's happening around where you live, not the Bay Area as a whole, not the nation as a whole. Now, although in this video in particular, we're going to focus on Contra Costa County for the month of October in 2023, a common example that I give is the city of Berkeley. If you're looking to buy or sell in Berkeley, that's a city that has a constant pattern and history of overbidding. So whatever the list price is, there is a repeated pattern of having to bid above the list price in order to get your offer accepted. And so whether you're a buyer or a seller, it's important to know that so that it doesn't surprise you. Now, before we proceed any further, my name is Ernesto Hernandez. I'm a Bay Area realtor, of course, and if at any point you have any questions or need some guidance around buying or selling real estate in the Bay Area, give me a call, send me a message anytime, and I would love to book a private consultation with you. Now, the way that I like to format this video is we focus on 5 cities across Contra Costa County in different locations with different demographics. We focus on Antioch, Brentwood, Concord, Walnut Creek, and Richmond. And you might be wondering yourself, well, what can really change over the course of a month? And the answer is a lot. There's one city in particular that saw a very strong year-over-year decline in their home prices. There was another city that saw a very strong increase year over year. And there's one city in particular that over the course of just the last 3 months alone has seen a $72,000 drop in the median price of their home. So therein lies the value of having a deep understanding of what's happening throughout different parts of the Bay Area. Okay, so let's begin. I'm in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen in case you lost me when I shrunk myself. And we're going to start with the city of Concord. So in the month of October, which just wrapped up, the median sales price for a single-family home in the city of Concord was $809,000. So what I like to do is look at the data one of two ways. One, what's happening recently, so the last 3 months, and also how this compares to year over year. So in September, the median sales price was $816,000. So, comparatively, that's been a small decline. And it's going to be interesting to see how these patterns are different throughout the different cities within Contra Costa County. So not a big drop, nothing to be scared of. And when we go back one further month, August, in that month, it was $818,000. That was the median. So all in all, pretty steady. For the last 3 months, a gentle decline, but that's kind of to be expected with what's happening with interest rates right now. When we look at year over year, so last October, the median sales price was $748,000, and this year, for the month of October in the city of Concord, it was again $809,000. So what does that mean? That means that year over year, when we go back exactly 1 year, home prices have actually increased in the city of Concord by 8%. And if we translate that into dollars, that's $61,000. So within Contra Costa County, this was actually one of the more generous increases that we saw. Another set of data that I like to look at for each city are other details about the market. So one of them is the sales price to list price ratio. Why is that important? That is important because if you're a buyer, you're going to know how much you're going to have to bid over the list price on average, not every time, but on average, you know, how much that difference is. And different cities are completely different. Same as a seller, right? So that's going to help you price your home accurately if you know how your specific city is behaving. So if we look at the month of October, the difference between the list price and the sales price is only 1%. So a $10,000 difference positive between what the home was listed for and what it actually ended up selling for. So not considered drastic. Versus other cities within the Bay Area, like Berkeley comes to mind, where it's continuously anywhere between 20 and 30% is the norm there in Berkeley, not the case in Concord. In Concord, for the month of October, the typical home took 13 days to get an offer and go into contract. So that's pretty standard for the city of Concord. And there were 71 homes that were sold last month within the city of Concord. Going back to September, again, not too different. There was a $19,000 difference between the list price and the sales price of your typical home in Concord. It took 14 days to get an offer, so not a big shift. And in September, there were 60 homes sold. So we saw an increase of 11 homes that were sold in October compared to September. August, similar patterns in some regard. So there was even a smaller difference between the list price and the sales price. So it was basically flat. There's only $1,000 difference. So what that means to you is what homes were listed for is pretty much what they sold for, by and large, with some exceptions. The market was a little bit slower back then, just by 2 days. So it took an average of 15 days to get an offer before you went into contract. In the month of August, there were 67 homes that were sold. So things are pretty steady, not a big change month over month, but this is not the case throughout the entire county. Now, what happened October of last year? Well, when we compare October of this year versus October of last year homes were actually selling for below list price as an average. So last year, homes were, whatever they were listed for, they sold for an average of 4% less, which meant $34,000. It was a slower market. It took 25 days to get an offer on average before you wanted a contract. And last year, there were 60 homes sold. So we actually saw more homes sold October of this year versus October of last year. Most cities are seeing a decline. So this is, taking a look back, these last 3 months have been pretty consistent in the city of Concord. We are seeing a gentle decline in prices over the course of these last 3 months. Year over year, however, the number of homes that are sold and the price of those homes is actually up. So hopefully that gives you a better understanding of exactly what's happening in the city of Concord. Moving on to the city of Antioch, and let's see what happened there for the month of October as it relates to its real estate market. So, the median sales price in the city of Antioch for October of 2023 was $635,000. So, first, let's look at how the last 3 months have behaved in Antioch. So, if we go back just a month, the median sales price was $595,000. So, we actually saw a pretty modest increase month over month, 7% in just 1 month is what we saw as far as the increase in the median price of a single family home in the city of Concord, which represents $40,000. But it's interesting, right? And you don't see this happen in every city. Compared to August, home prices actually declined from August going into September. So in August, median sales price was $655,000. We saw a modest decrease of 9% in just a month. All right. And so it went down by $60,000. So we started high in August, went down in September, and then came back up in October. And again, you don't see this in every city, which is really the value of doing these reports. When we look at what happened year over year, so again, October of this year, the median sales price was $635,000. A year ago, it was $627,000. Not a big change. So, in some cities, you're seeing pretty aggressive year over year increases. In some cities, you're seeing a pretty aggressive decrease. But in Antioch, year over year, things are actually pretty flat. Looking at other aspects of the market, not a city where you traditionally have to bid a lot over the list price to get your offer accepted, and this data supports that. But the other thing that we see here is that this is not generally a fast moving market. So, October of this year, the difference between the list price and the sales price was just 4%. So, you don't have to overbid too much on average on a home that you really like. It took 27 days, though, to get an offer accepted. So, what does that tell you as a buyer? As a buyer, you know, most of the time, homes are available into week 2, week 3, and coming upon the end of week 4 is, normally when the offer is accepted or negotiated between a buyer and a seller. As a seller, right? Conversely, generally you shouldn't get nervous if you don't have a great offer in week 1 or 2. That's just not how Antioch is performing. And so, it could take, in this case, 27 days is the average to get an offer that you really, really like and then go into contract with. October's volume was 81 homes, which was the best month of the last quarter and higher than last year as well. What happened in September? So September was actually flat or just a tiny negative, $4,000. So again, things are selling for approximately what the list price is. Homes were moving a little bit quicker in September. They went into contract in 20 days as opposed to 27, and the number of homes sold in September of this year was 63. Now let's go back one more month to August. And again, similar. So Antioch just doesn't have a history of being one of those cities where you have to bid a lot over ask to get your offer accepted. It was a 2% difference between the list price and the sales price. Homes were going into contract in approximately 25 days, and there were 76 homes sold in the city of Antioch for August of 2023. Now, what happened last year? Last year was really not too different. It was actually a slower market, very slow compared to this last quarter, for example, in Antioch. So last year, a 1% difference negative between the list price and the sales price. So it was very common for homes to get sold slightly below the list price. It took 40 days on average to get an offer accepted. So again, if you're a buyer, you don't have to feel so rushed. Maybe you go out and see a home that you love at an open house. You have time to talk to a lender, get your offer accepted, and then write your offer. Get pre-approved and then get your offer accepted. And as a seller, again, you had to be patient, right? That's just what was happening. So understanding this information is super important. Now, if you have 40 days on market in other parts of the city like San Jose, Berkeley, San Francisco, well, you might start to get nervous. But Antioch, that was normal. And lastly, October of 2022, there were 76 homes that were sold. Well, so not a big difference year over year, an increase of just 5 homes. Alrighty, moving on to Walnut Creek, which, if you're not from the Bay Area, Walnut Creek is absolutely one of the most desirable places in the Bay Area and in Contra Costa County to live. It is a little bit more exclusive, higher price points, less movement in terms of the real estate market from a volume perspective. But let's see how it behaved in October of 2023. Look at the last 3 months and what happened year over year. So, October of this year, last month, $1.5 million essentially was the median sales price of a home in Walnut Creek. So, about twice what you'll see in places like Antioch, for example, which is only 20 minutes away. When we see how that compares against just a month prior, very negligible difference, $11,000. So almost flat, not a big difference going from September of this year to just a month ago. But August did see a pretty modest increase in the median sales price of a home there. So August, the median sales price was $1.4 million, but going into September, it went up to $1.5 million. So that represents a 7% increase or $100,000. So that was really the 1 month where you saw a big shift in activity in the city of Walnut Creek. If we compare October of this year versus October of last year, not a big change either. So again, this year, the median price of a home was $1.5 million. A year ago, it was $1,488,000. Not big, not huge in the grand scheme of things, especially at this price point. That's about a $23,000 difference. Moving on to part two of the data. So it's interesting. There are some months where you had to be a little bit more aggressive than others, and we'll see exactly which those were. So October, not a big difference between the list price and the final sales price of a home. On average, you had to overbid by about 2% or $36,000. So nothing crazy, but September was different, right? September was different. What we saw in the month of September was that on average, people offered $100,000 above this price, which represented a difference of 8%. So that is definitely one of the more aggressive months that you're going to see in the city of Walnut Creek, to be specific. And in August, it was the most predictable, right? So whatever homes were listing for is pretty much what they were selling for. So a very, very small difference, only $11,000. However, comparing that to October of last year, you had to bid 5% above the list price to get your offer accepted. Again, this is the average. It's not every single time. So you have some months where you had to be a little bit more aggressive than others. So really important to have a strong pulse on what's going on in the specific city that you're looking to buy or sell in. In terms of days on market, very consistent. If we go back over the last 3 months, if we compare it year over year, what happens normally in Walnut Creek is homes go into contract at about week 3, right? So not a big change. October 17 days, September 21 days, August 21 days, and October of last year 22 days. So if anything, October of this year, the month that just finished, was the fastest moving month in terms of buyers and sellers coming to an agreement on the offer that they want to then go into contract on. In terms of volume, October was, one of the lighter months when you look at it from the perspective of year over year. So 29 homes sold in Walnut Creek. It's not a lot. 31 in September, 29 in August. In October of last year, there were 44 homes sold. So it's, again, interesting to see how, cities compare to one another. And Walnut Creek tends to be a lower volume month, but mainly because it's a smaller city, higher price points. But still, it's about as low as it's going to get as far as volume goes in Walnut Creek. So everybody hopes that volume begins to pick up there. Okay, now we're moving on to the city of Brentwood. And if you're not from the Bay Area, Brentwood may be unfamiliar to you. It is deep eastern Contra Costa County, and really, in my opinion, kind of the eastern threshold of the Bay Area itself. After Brentwood, you have a medium-sized city called Discovery Bay. And then after Discovery Bay, you have this sizable gap of about 30 minutes before you get to Stockton. So this is kind of the edge of what most people would consider to be the Bay Area on the eastern front. And so let's see what happened there last month as it relates to the real estate market. So October median sales price was $765,000. That was a very small, almost flat decrease from the month before. So pretty steady. There was $1,000 decrease from the month of September, which ended at $766,000. However, if we go back to August, August had a median sales price of $775,000. So August to September was a $9,000 decline, still super modest in the grand scheme of things, probably a 1% difference, almost negligible. Here's really kind of the interesting thing for Brentwood, and this was the single most aggressive decline that we saw year over year out of all the data that I pulled for the 5 cities of Contra Costa County. A year ago, the median sales price in Brentwood was $905,000. In fact, over 50% of the homes that sold a year ago sold for over $905,000. This year, it dropped significantly to 765, which represents a 15% year over year decline. That is pretty significant. And that is about as big of a change upward or downward as you're going to see in real estate value. So it'll be interesting to see how Brentwood progresses. I wouldn't get super nervous. Brentwood is super desirable, definitely on the upswing as a whole. But surprising nonetheless, right? If you are shopping for a home this year versus shopping for a home just a year ago, this I think represents a good buying opportunity for someone looking to move in there. And if you are a seller and maybe you bought a year ago and some life event happened that's forcing you to relocate, you may not be happy with what's happening, but the data is the data. So very, very interesting out of Brentwood. Moving on to part two of Brentwood, sales price to list price different was almost flat, right? 1%, not much, represents a $15,000 difference. In September, it was almost flat, $3,000. August, 1%, $6,000 difference. So by and large, and I tell people all the time, Brentwood is a good example of a city where historically it really doesn't matter. Even in the peak of the market, I would say it wasn't a big difference between the list price and the sales price. So important to know as a buyer and as a seller. In terms of days on market, I don't think I've ever seen Brentwood in the low teens. It has historically been kind of a slower moving market, definitely a super desirable suburban area for families in particular. October, 27 days on market is what it took to get your offer accepted for a buyer and seller to agree on a contract. In September, it was 22 days, August, 24 days. However, a year ago in October of 2022, it took 40 days. So it was definitely a much slower market a year ago, even though prices were higher. In terms of the number of homes sold, the lowest volume in a bit in Brentwood. So definitely not as many homes um, being bought and sold in the city of Brentwood. So 37 homes sold. That represents a pretty significant decline compared to recent months and even year over year. So in September, there were 56 homes that were sold, August, the 65. So you can see how 37 is a pretty drastic decline. And let's hope that more inventory becomes available, which I think is good for both buyers and sellers. Um, but we'll keep an eye out and see what happens in Brentwood. All right, so we're bringing it home with the city of Richmond. And if you're not familiar with the geography of the Bay Area, Richmond is opposite of Brentwood. Brentwood is very deep eastern Contra Costa County. After that, it essentially becomes the Central Valley. But Richmond is on the western edge of Contra Costa County. It has shoreline with the bay, and it's just slightly north of the city of Berkeley. So let's see what happened in Richmond as far as the real estate market is concerned. So we are seeing declines in Richmond, unlike we've seen in other parts of Contra Costa County. October saw a median sales price of $640,000. When you compare that versus just a month ago, that's a decline of $65,000. And that's about as big as you're going to see anywhere in Contra Costa County. So, again, represents the importance of knowing what's happening in your specific city. If we go back 1 month, further back, August. So August, the median sales price was $712,000. So it's interesting that it's just over the course of a quarter, you can see real estate prices decline by $72,000 in the same city. That is pretty significant and not something that you're seeing in a lot of other cities. Now, when we compare the data to just a year ago, October of last year was $633,000. So you're still up year over year, but not by much. It's a 1% increase year over year, which is $7,000. But super interesting and really unique to other parts of Contra Costa County that Richmond is seeing the recent declines that it is in terms of its home values. Looking at another side of the market, what we're seeing is that in Richmond, the specific to the month of October, you had to bid on average 7% above the list price to get your offer accepted. So really kind of interesting set of behaviors, right? We're seeing values decline month over month, but October is actually one of the more, well, definitely more competitive than September was, because in September, you only had to bid 3% or $20,000 above list price to get your offer accepted on average. If we go back a month further back in August, that was the strongest month of the last 3 months for the city of Richmond and its real estate market. And in August, you had to bid on average 10% above the list price or $62,000 to get your offer accepted. Now, what was happening in October of a year ago? Very similar to October of this year. So this year it's a 7% difference. Last year it's a 6% difference. In terms of how quickly homes go into contract in Richmond, you won't find a city that's more steady, I'll tell you that. So 20 days exactly for each of the last 3 months is the average number of days that it took for a buyer and a seller to come to an agreement and go into contract. However, a year ago, things were moving a little bit quicker by about a week. So it's interesting how this year things are just not moving as fast. So important to know both as a buyer and as a seller. Inventory, October of this year saw 55 homes that were sold. September, 46. So that was a difference of 9 homes. August, it was a little bit higher at 50. And a year ago, pretty much flat. 58 homes were sold compared to 55 this year. So not a huge change in activity, unlike other cities that we reviewed in this report. So that does it. Thank you so much for watching the October market update report for Contra Costa County. If you have any questions whatsoever you want to discuss that I can possibly help you out with, whether buying or selling real estate, send me a message, give me a call. We'd love to hear from you and hopefully be a resource to you. Have a great day.